So I built this plant stand for all my nursery plants that I've been potting up or sowing in my new station, my new potting up station, which you can see in my new kind of like this whole seating area that I did. And then I've got this potting station here. And I must say, I have lived down this end of the garden since I did it. But I realised that in order to make this garden even more practical, I needed somewhere to put my nursery plants. I did ideally want them in this area too, but I felt that would be pushing it and I'd ruin the aesthetic, and the feeling would become too cluttered, and then it would become stressful. So I made this planter, which is in a south-facing part of my first terrace as I come out the back door of my garden. And it's all got these detachable shelves so that you can so each four of the slats are held together as a one sort of unit, so that you can remove them and put taller plants in or whatever. So basically it's, functional for all sorts of different things. The only thing I have noticed since I did it is obviously the back end of the wider shelf on the bottom is more shady. So, it probably would be good for seedlings that don't require much light to get started. So I'll probably use the back of the slats for that. But of course, if you had it in a more open area, it would get light all the way around anyway, because it's not solid. I just wanted it up against this wall where I grow the grapes, because I know this is a really like a little microclimate that's really warm. So I thought that would be perfect for sort of hardy annuals and hardy perennials that don't need too much fussing over winter, and they can stay out the way. And then as I come out into my garden, I see them and I remember to water them and care for them. And I just coated it with tung oil, which is a natural product which I got from Amazon. That doesn't smell. It's not like creosote or any of those horrible chemically things, which are, I think they're banned in the UK anyway, those chemical products. And so it's completely waterproof. So I did 2 coats of that. So they just started off, and I actually made lots of mistakes. Look, this isn't really a how-to with, measurements and all that sort of thing. I basically had an old fence in the front of my garden, which was removed, and I used the pickets from the fence to make this project. So it didn't actually cost me anything but the tung oil. And I did actually make mistakes. So this video I was making here now, I actually had to take apart and start again. But essentially, because see the top joint there, because they were on top of it, one laid on top of the other, it meant I didn't have a flat surface when I came to put on the shelving joists across the central legs. Basically what you wanted was 2 triangle pieces of wood either end of the shelving. That's all I wanted. One was vertical, completely vertical, so you can put it up against a wall, and then the other angled out, which meant I had to cut the foot of the front facing pallet wood strut, obviously to lay flat on the floor. So then I just cut these little these are going to be little pegs, if you like, that the long shelving struts would fit on. So these are going to go across here, and then the shelves that will join the 2 triangle ends together will rest on top of there. I mean, all carpenters out there, yes, I'm sure you're all wincing, but I haven't done anything. I mean, I actually built this chicken coop, funny enough, next to my potting station, but it was a long time ago, and even that has its problems. I mean, it's solid. I'm good at making them solid. I'm just not good at necessarily making them really beautiful, but I like rustic, and I'm learning, so I don't really care. And this just goes to show, by the way, anyone can do it. But it does require, a new way of thinking. If you're not building things every day, then there is actually these YouTubers make it look so simple, but there is actually quite a lot to think about if you're new to it. It's actually a bit like oil painting. It always seems simple, but once you actually start getting into it, Anyhow, look, you can see I've got these little pegs now on, but I do have to take these top joints apart so that I can flatten them. And this is what I mean about it not being second nature to me, because it was only when I started putting the pegs on and then I realised I was going to have to put the struts across that I realised with the overlap on the top joint where the two legs cross over, it's not going to be straight. So I had to rethink that again. So here they are now fixed. Look at the top there, how I've attached them together with a notch rather than have them overlapping each other there. Yeah, so that they're now flat. So when I put the struts across, they're lying flat against each other. And as you can see, I braced it with this sort of back. So the idea was that these two end pieces are exactly the same. And I felt that from there, it would all work out. What I didn't do was I should have measured the angles between the bottom legs, the lengths, to make sure I was getting those straight. But, you know, that's an amateur error. I didn't do that. So ultimately, there is a slight wonkiness on one of the front legs. But the whole thing is so sturdy, it really doesn't matter. I'm not too worried about it for a first time go. And I think it looks attractive. It's got the rustic vibe I wanted. So I wasn't too bothered. So as you can see, I've got my pegs in place. I've got it braced. And now I just need to build the shelves, which I had to do indoors because I realised building it on the garden, another, learning curve. Building it on the garden meant that it wasn't actually straight, as you can see. So I made some errors here because I needed a flat floor. Excuse the state of my garage. It's a mess. I had to bring it indoors and build it in here. Now, again, not thinking ahead, I realised that I didn't have enough of the pickets from the fence, this length, to do all the shelves. So I only had enough to do the top shelf lengthwise, and then I had to cut the other pallets because they were much shorter, the pickets rather. I had to then cut them into the struts that actually gave me the flexible 4-piece unit that you see. That's what gave me the idea that I could make it a flexible unit and I could remove shelving in sort of modules. So where the top shelf was just resting across 2 struts on either side of the triangle, for the other shelves I did have to build extra frames front and back for the wood to rest on. And then I had to reinforce the length of those frames so that they didn't collapse in the middle. As you can see here, I've put some brace, and then I've put in between the shelves 2 little sort of struts there just to hold the weight a little bit better. So once I had all the shelving in place, I did put another one on the bottom there. All that was really left to do was to measure up the pallets, the pickets, and cut them to size so that they would fit front to back on the frame. So then as I was figuring out doing these slats, I realised that I wanted a gap because 1, I would use less wood, and 2, it meant that the water and any soil debris or whatever from the pots, I could just brush between the gaps onto the floor and keep it nice and tidy and clean. And at this point, I was thinking, this is looking good. I'm actually really, really pleased with that I did this, because at one point I did start to lose the will to live, but at this point I'm thinking, oh, I love it. So then there was just the I used this old Amazon shed thing that I bought that was absolutely rubbish and fell apart within a year. So I took the wood from it, which was very thin, as you can see, and I've used that to go to pin the 4 slats in the modules together underneath and within the frame. So this frame here, so that they lock on, if that makes any sense, so that the shelf can't come forward or back. So it's solid when it's on, even though the pallets are loose and in a module form, with these underneath, it locks them in place so that you can't pull it forward. Simple though that job sounds, I still had to do some sort of reverse thinking, because I had to make sure that, first of all, the slats were inside the shelf, because otherwise then the slats wouldn't fit, smoothly on the shelf, flush, if you like. So I had to draw the lines from underneath to make sure they were inside the shelving. Does this make sense? Anyway, the point is there was a lot of winging it because I don't have any carpentry skills as such. And so whilst these things may be second nature to somebody who does them every day, they were not second nature to me. And so there was a lot of screws going in and out and in and out. And I even learned during this project make that poor screws actually are a nightmare, because if you buy cheap screws, then they just mess up. They only go halfway in before the head is damaged, and then you can't get them in or out. And this makes the project, instead of being very quick with an electric screwdriver, the whole thing starts to become a nightmare. And I flipped between nails and screws because I didn't go to the shop and buy anything apart from the tung oil. So I had to just use what I had already. And some of that stuff wasn't the best quality, the nails. So the nails were better quality in the end than some of the screws. I did have some good screws, but I didn't always have enough. So that was a bit of a juggle, but I've learnt now. So now I know to buy good quality screws next time I do a project like this. So then all that was left to do was to stain it with the tung oil. Now, interestingly, it says for indoor use only on the tin here, but I did my research and it said that it was a natural weatherproofer. So I was really surprised when maybe they're just protecting themselves from, any criticism. But you can see it's safe there because you can use it for food stuff. Not that I would, because I still felt it was very strong and very tacky, like I wouldn't want to ingest it. But anyhow, as you can see, it has repelled the rain here and it's perfectly natural. It has a quite strong but pleasant smell. It's not like that chemical smell you get from Terps white spirit. You could have even used refined linseed oil, which I have lots of from my painting, but I know that's toxic and flammable, so I didn't want to use that. So I settled on the tung oil, and overall I'm pretty happy with it. I absolutely love it. And here it is, full of all my cuttings and everything from my new potting station. Oh my gosh, I'm loving my garden right now. I'm feeling really empowered to make the garden how I want without always having to pay someone else to do stuff. And if you agree and you want to see more, then subscribe, hit the notification bell. And my next video is actually going to be an update on all those plants that I've planted, and I'll do a tour of all the seeds that I've seeded for winter sowing and for, basically cold hardy annuals and perennials that will happily get through the winter. I've done all of those, or nearly all of them, and I've got some really interesting seeds that you may not have seen planted in other videos. So that's going to be exciting, and I'll do that in my next video. So make sure you subscribe, click the notification bell and all that jazz, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped. Look, I know it's not a map, but if it at least inspires you to have a go. I've got no experience and I think this is a great result. So, if you feel the same, just have a go, and it's fun. Thanks for watching. Bye.